Welcome to Finscale, a podcast created by Solen Niederkorn, shedding light on innovation in finance, banking, and insurance.
Streamlining card issuance. Denise Johansson, co-founder and co-CEO of Enfuce.
If we go to the new generation of issuers, the fintechs, those who really keep up with the tech services that do develop user-friendly, cool mobile apps, for them it's maybe more around compliance and having the capabilities to scale their services when people are ready to adapt to whatever they are issuing. So in one hand, tech, on the other, scalability and compliance.
Back to payments with Denise, where she shares her immense knowledge and expertise in card issuance. In this episode, we start with a brief overview of the card payment transaction value chain, covering the key parties involved, from the cardholders to the issuer, and the role played by payment schemes on both a EU and global scale. She discusses the challenges faced by card issuers and explains how Enfuce addresses these by providing unique solutions and services that streamline the card issuance process and improves efficiency. You get to learn that Enfuce also supports card issuers when it comes to security, compliance, and risk management, ensuring regulatory adherence. We talk about the SLA, where continuous high availability, timelines, and transparent pricing are crucial. Denise sheds light on the robust infrastructure implemented by Enfuce to ensure secure and reliable payment processing, along with their diligent measures to maintain conformity and regulatory compliance. During the episode, we examine a fascinating case study involving the successful partnership between Enfuce and Pleo. Denise explains how Enfuce addressed Pleo's specific needs, contributing to a seamless user experience through their innovative cloud-based solution. This co-CEO, who just happens to know her co-founder since 2007, describes what a co-CEO organization can bring to the table and how efficient it can be. Enjoy the show! Hello everyone. Hi Denise.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, perfect. Very, very happy to have you on my podcast. And I would like to thank Nicole, who kindly made the connection with you and organized this recording. Thank you, Nicole. Denise, may I ask you to quickly present yourself to the audience?
Yes. So I'm Denise Johansson. I'm a co-founder and co-CEO of fintech called Enfuce. Mm-hmm. My destiny in my work life has been around payments. So I stumbled upon payments directly after graduating back in 2004 by starting to work at a bank. And then I've been kept going for now 19 years. So yes, it's been payment all my life, going from building mostly card issuing propositions at banks to moving to the technology side of how they are developed, and then being unhappy with what we saw on the market, and then 2016 founded Enfuce to be able to serve the industry with better services.
Okay, great. So payments. So I'm happy because we will talk about card issuance and payments. I like to go into the details and understand the friction point, pain points. So if we go back to card issuance, what would you say are the main friction points that card issuers face when it comes to card issuance? Could you please explain with simple words and maybe go back to the entire value chain? Because I've covered bits and parts, but I think it would worth remembering the audience about this value chain.
Yes, as with everything, I think it's hard to give a general answer to what's the actual friction points. It will always depend on who is the issuer I have in front of me. But if we look at the value chain of a payment, it's the card issuer are those who hand out the plastic or the digital cards that every one of us have in our wallets and that we pay with. and we pay usually the merchant online or at a POS terminal when we buy our groceries, and then it goes through the schemes to the acquirers, who then again the schemes collect who is the issuer behind it, who should pay it, and sends the transactions to the issuer, who record all our transactions and then make sure that we are debited in correct manners. And if we look about the frictions that the issuers are facing, it really, I would say then, let's categorize the issuers into two categories. We have the big incumbent banks, and I would say their frictions are mostly around how fast the technology is developing. So keeping up with the new generation of tech enablement and having the most cool app to get the users actually using their cards. So from the existing players, it's the tech. But if we go to the new generation of issuers, the fintechs, those who really keep up with the tech services that do develop user-friendly, cool mobile apps, for them, it's maybe more around compliance and having the capabilities to scale their services when people are ready to adapt to whatever they are issuing. So in one hand, tech, on the other, scalability and compliance.
Okay. And how did you realize that, how did the idea of creating Enfuce emerge in your head? And what were the critical points you wanted to solve? Because you described it quite general, but I believe that when you decided to create Enfuce, you had a very precise idea in mind.
Yes, we did. So when we founded Enfuce, I had been within the industry almost 15 years. So I had seen how to create the services from the issuer's perspective. So how do we keep up with what our end users want to have? What kind of services will the new generations want to have in their hand? And I had also seen from technology side, once building the platform from scratch, from first code base to throughout the whole cycle of it, it took almost 3 years. And then I had been 3-4 times being involved in developing card issuings where we utilize the services existing in Europe. And that's where I was it was almost like all service providers had this agreement between each other that these are the SLAs that the industry deserve. Let's not stress about project timelines. It will take how long it will take. Let's take a lot of investment upfront from the issuers. And let's not be too transparent with our pricing because they do have money to pay. So it was really hard to plan timetables. It was no one challenged on the SLA. So with a card issuing service, it needs to be high availability, and even 0.01% can make a difference in real life. So what we set out to do when we founded Enfuce, that we said we will have Europe's best industry standard on SLA. So it's not only about the promising 99.999, it is about living up to it. So when we are facing the future customers, we will actually have proof of the last 6 to 12 months to show that we have high availability. We also said that we are going to be best in Europe to bring new propositions to production. So we want to challenge the timetables. We want to challenge the upfront investments needed. It needs to be so modular so that it's easy to build to what the customer in front of us want to have, because tech is evolving so fast. So if this project is going to take a year, we have probably left the train station and there is a new thing that everyone wants. And third was, let's have real transparent pricing. So our customers should really understand basis for what we are charging. What are we charging? Why are we charging? And they should understand how it develops when their product is successful on the market. Those were the 3 main things that we wanted to solve and that I think that we have solved.
if we continue on this big picture, the different stakeholders that you have on your day-to-day basis, can you please remind who they are? So if we are talking about, for instance, Visa, so Visa is performing what? When you're talking about, and we'll talk about the PO case, PO is the card issuer. And can you please, go back to the constellation of different actors that you are facing?
Yes. So if we talk about the card schemes where we have MasterCard and Visa as the main global card schemes, and what they really provide are the global payment rails. So if we in Europe move money, it's going to be a SEPA transaction. It's going to be cleared through target to clearing and settlement. And this happens within Europe. So we can create the SEPA instant. And that means that from one country to another, we can instantly change money. But this only works in Europe. So if we want to have a global payment rails that really move from within seconds money from Brazil to Japan, then it's going to be one of the global payment scheme. And that is then MasterCard or Visa, for example. And those are the ones that enable our service. If they wouldn't exist, we could still exist because then it would be something else. But they are the one that really move the transactions on global basis. So all our customers choose which payment rail they are going to rely on and then build the proposition based on that. And they are I would say, the most important one. But then when we deal with the financial services, we also need to integrate with the KYC providers. So anyone who wants to onboard a customer to their proposition, they need to know who they are onboarding. And here we have no global KYC enablement yet. So that, I think, is for the future to solve. So this really differs depending on where in Europe you are or globally where you are. How do you actually onboard? But KYC providers are really important for us. We are regulated, highly regulated. So, for example, AML, anti-money laundering, comes into place for us. So we need to have good partners when it comes to how can we detect fraud? Because on those global payment rails, Visa and MasterCard, of course, there are always people trying to do fraud and just make fraudulent transaction on it. Will someone detect? So, and we at Enfuce, we do protect all our issuers within our platform. So we need to have a world-leading fraud detection service that we give to the customers.
Okay.
So that's also...
Okay. The ML point is quite critical.
Yes.
Okay, so you just told us that you decided to create Enfuce because you wanted to improve and have a very high standard for all those card issuers. Can you explain to us how you built the company? Because you're a co-CEO, so I believe that you have co-founded the company. Yes. And can you go back a little bit in the past and explain to us how it emerged, how it was created?
Yes. So I met my co-founder already back in 2007. So a long time ago. And my co-founder was building a bank in Finland. And they provided the services from my previous employer, Kroski. So I was the provider and she was the customer. And some years further on the line, she actually joined the same side as me. So suddenly we had the same employer. And when she gathered her closest team, she recognized my name from the list of employees and took me into her leadership team. And I think it's then from 2009 that we started to work very closely together. And it's like when you find your soulmate, but in business. So someone that sets the standard, sets the goal, see the vision exactly the way that you do, and where you really complement each other on skills and strengths. So we had a blast working together already at the previous employer. And then one day when she just was fed up with everything around us. She quit, but we never said goodbye. We just said that let's do something together soon again. And I think it passed like 4 months between that date until she called me and asked, Denise, isn't it time for us to do something? And I said, yes, let's do. What are we going to do?
Let's move forward. Let's move forward.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it was a really easy decision to make the jump together with her. And we've tackled everything that we have come up against since that together. And I wouldn't do this journey without her. So having a co in business, I think, is the success factor for myself, and something I recommend for everyone, especially if we think about how everything have changed in the world over the past years since we founded Enfuce, how many new obstacles that no one of us could have predicted. And when you have a co in business, it's much easier to tackle that. And yes, we run the business as co-CEOs. And for some, it can be a question like, how do you really do it? But most who meet me and Monica in real life, you don't need to spend more like 5-10 minutes. And then you just see that, okay, it is really a co-situation. And there are no question marks for anyone at Enfuce how it's working. It's we really do it as a duo.
Great to hear that, because it's the first time I have on my podcast a company where you have two CEOs actually. So you very precisely described the different stakeholders in the value chain, but I would be interested to go one step further with you and understand the way you built your solution from a pure infrastructure perspective. Could you please investigate with us the infrastructure of Enfuce and tell us how you embedded different solutions?
Oh, where should I start with this one? Well, Enfuce built upon
the main building blocks. The main building blocks.
Yeah, it's cloud native system, and we were the first one in the world to put payment processing public cloud, and we knew that we had to do it to provide a state of the art and highly available payment processing system. So we challenged the status quo back then, and now it's the norm. Tech stack, it's mainly built on Java and some Node.js, React, Python. So we are not fixed on having one single truth. We are really using what's best fit for purpose on different areas. We build with principles such as zero-touch production, immutable servers, and infrastructure as a code, just to, again, give the highest available service for our customers. So I would say these three principles are the main parts that allows us to move really fast and to be able to develop new features and functionalities and continuously release to production. As said, if we take too long on something, that will be legacy when it hit productions. So it's really important that you constantly move forward in the value chain, whatever you are developing.
And in terms, because you mentioned AML, for instance, so AML checks, you perform them internally, or did you take an external solution?
So we have an external software, so Featurespace. We work with them. But of course, tech is only as good as the people using the technology is. So it definitely helps us to provide the service we do. But it's all about combining tech, people, and processes. But yes, Featurespace is the system that we use. But then I would say we have a world-leading AML team who is constantly working to improve and with a mission to provide the best service.
Yeah, clearly. And in terms of security and compliance, because in the financial sectors, you have to always prove and get some audit trails, etc. So did you put in place some specific measures, or did you perform SOC 2 Type 2 reports or audits on your solution?
Well, yes, and yes. So I think there is nothing that you can not be doing in this area. So all data is, of course, encrypted, both in rest and in transit. We are PCI DSS certified, meaning we have yearly audits from a tech perspective, but then we are also ourselves issuer. Mm-hmm. So we also have the EMI license, meaning that we also bring on board third parties to really audit our processes, ways of working for what goes beyond the technology, because I think 3DS really is mostly about, not 3DS, the PCI DSS is mostly about that we do the tech side of things correct, but then tech is maybe easier to get right than the actual human touch points to the tech and how people are doing things. So I think it's, again, you need to make sure, and I think the audits, the purpose of them is to have evidence, proof to our customers that we continue to operate in manners that we have promised them. So rather than them having to ask for proof of it, and especially if we look what's happened in Europe over the past years and how many are not doing the compliance sides right, it's even more important that we constantly do third-party assessments on our operations and continue to improve them and operate on high standard.
Great news. So I previously mentioned the Pleo case. It's the one that is, official on your website. So we could take another one if you want. We can take another one, but I wanted this one. So Pleo is a spend management solution, and I was interested to see to understand the needs identified in the beginning, because in my opinion, and before knowing Enfuce, I thought that those kind of companies were directly going to the schemes and implementing their own solutions. So I was interested that you maybe go back again to the needs in these specific use cases, and that we really understand the nature of the partnership that you have built together.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Pleo is a great example of our capabilities, and we are invisible behind their service, and that's exactly how it's supposed to be. So with them, we met them back in 2017. So we were really just a 1-year-old company when we met them the first time. And we were introduced because they had set out to build their own payment processing solution after a couple of years being live with another vendor who they didn't like. So they thought that this is something that we have to do ourselves. They were in the process of becoming their own MasterCard member themselves. And then it was the tech part that they were thinking that could they get some hints of do's and don'ts when building the infrastructure. And we took the conversation, but with an aim to actually sign them as a customer. And it took some months to convince them, but then in the end, they understood that actually no, building the infrastructure of payment processing is not within the core of their knowledge. They are really good at expense management. They are really good at reading what the end users of their application wants and how it should work, but then how the actual transactions are connected to MasterCard and that they are running 24/7 with SLA of 99.999, that's not the core of them. So we are the boring but also important infrastructure behind the fancy mobile app interface that they have built on top of it. So all the software that's Pleo themselves, but then the hardware, the hardcore behind the software, that's where Enfuce comes to play.
Okay, and that would be interesting that you described a little bit the features that it enables for them, so in front for their clients.
Yes, so I think they have adapted to most of the modern features that we are enabling for our customers. So, for example, when I log into their mobile app, they can provide me with my digital card and my physical card details. I can see my PIN for my physical card. I can copy my credentials for my virtual card, so the long PAN number or validity or CVV code, everything can be visible for there. I instantly see my transactions. What have I done over the past 12 months? What transactions are renewables? And if I do an online purchase, the 3DS is popping up within the mobile app. Mm-hmm. So it's really frictionless, and they use then also the modern technologies of face recognition. So in that way, it's also really easy to use. And my online shopping or whatever shopping I'm doing, it's as frictionless as it can be. They have also adopted to Apple Pay, Google Pay. We are again the enabler of that behind the app.
So Pleo was they used Enfuce in the beginning, so meaning that they didn't start trying on their side, or did they start building something and then they realized that they needed you? How
No, they had been live a couple of years, and I'm not going to mention with whom, but they have been live with one of the still existing competitors in Europe for a couple of years. But their biggest pain point was the availability. So the service was down way too often. And if you are going to serve the B2B industry, if I'm doing, as a business owner, I'm doing my flight bookings right now, the card that I use need to be working. It's not that I'm going to try again 10 minutes later or 60 minutes later. I'm going to book my trips now. And they couldn't grow more, like they couldn't scale throughout Europe. They couldn't onboard more companies because when that service provider had downtime, it affected them massively with having angry customer calls coming in. Why is the card not working? How is it this bad? So they really needed the high availability. They needed to trust the service provider. And then they seeked for that trust, and they thought that maybe this is what we have to do ourselves. But then when we learned to know each other, they realized that no, this is what these people really want to do. They have done it before. They know how good looks like. So let's trust Enfuce on it.
And in terms of switching, switching one solution to Enfuce is complex, or how is it working? In terms of integration, how long does it take?
The integration is not the hard part at all. Then it depends how our customers, if they have been using someone else, how much have they adapted to how they do things in front of the customers according to the legacy provider. So if they have built in a lot of mechanisms to support a shitty infrastructure in behind, then there might be a total rebuild for them to get to the new generation. But we have had early startup fintechs who have built the connection within a weekend. So that's how easy it can be if you start from scratch. But then if you are switching over, you need to have a new generation of your mobile app, for example, and you need to decide on flows. If you can improve them, will you do it right away? Will you continue with the features exactly as is until the migration is completed? With Pleo, they wanted the new features from the moment they migrated. So they rebuilt everything that they were unhappy with. And then we did the migration when they were ready to launch that new app. But it didn't take them more than, I would say, 4 months. But they were also then becoming a member of MasterCard, and that took some time as well. But then they decided to do a relaunch of the full Pleo service that were also had the capabilities to scale beyond their markets they were in back then. So yeah, it depends, as with everything in life.
So it's easier when it's a startup that has just been founded.
Definitely, that's easy. But then again, you have 0 customers, so then it's going to, the hard part will be to attract customers. So exactly. I would still go for having a huge customer base in the backbone and do a little more technology work.
And what is the nature of your first customers are mainly tech companies, fintech companies, or can you make a short overview of your clientele? The nature of the client, and mention a little bit the number of employees, because you didn't mention the size of your company.
Yes. So I'm going to be honest with you. When we built Enfuce, we built it to serve the banks in Europe because we thought that the banks deserve better. But we had to find out pretty soon that actually banks don't dare to buy from the newly founded fintech, no matter how mature the founders are and how confident they are in their service. So we had to switch focus from the banks, who we knew very well, to serve merchants and fintech. So our first customer was the Shell brand up in the Nordics, serving 3 countries with fleet and fuel card. So it was, I think, the most complex product that you can start from an infrastructure perspective with. So we started off with merchants, then moving into the space of fintechs. And there we had to stay quite some years. But now we are finally over the hurdle. I don't know if it's the age of the company, the size of the company, or the track record of the company. But today there are also banks who trust in us. We are around 130 people today. We are at ARR just above 13 million and serving almost 40 plus customers around whole of Europe. Okay. So our main portion of the customers are in the Nordics and in the UK, but they then have customers in 26 countries of Europe. So we are really live everywhere.
Great. And you have been through different funding rounds since you created the company, like a Series C with Tencent. So how is it bringing you for the coming years?
Yes, so we were lucky in December 21, 6th of December, that we closed our Series C with Vitruvian, leading that round of 45 million, being the biggest female-led fintech founding round in Europe by that time. And then in 22 February, the landscape changed totally in Europe. And of course, we had we were expanding. We had plans how we would be in round D within 12 to 18 months from the Series D. But then the war came, the landscape changed, and we also quite quickly made a decision that let's not go for the high growth at the moment. Let's go for stable and predictable growth. So at the moment, we are really working on the unit economics, and we are most likely turning into profit before we go into the D round. So we don't even have a set timeline for the round will come. We know what we want to do that day, and that is to scale beyond Europe. But for Europe, we are all set and good to go, and we are going to make this a profitable center for ourselves before focusing on the expansion beyond. And it's all going to be dependent on macroeconomics and the landscape.
I didn't know that you had been the most founded female team. So congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so Denise, it's the end of our discussion. I would be happy if you could recommend to the audience, a book or a podcast, something that inspires us.
I'm really not the inspirational person. When I switch off from work, I totally switch off. So I don't read any management book. I don't listen to any management podcast. I listen to murder stories and I read murder stories in books. I don't know what it says about me, but that's how I switch off my brain. But one book that I have read and that actually have been a big part of the rebrand of whole Enfuce rebranding is actually Simon Sinek and Start With Why.
Yes.
And that was actually like the model book for how we started with the rebranding work. And it took us 9 months to go through the whole journey. But I really love our rebranding. And now I believe in Simon Sinek even more than I did before.
Me also. I do agree. He's great. Thank you very much, Denise. That was very very interesting. And thank you for all the details that you provided to us.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all for listening and sharing this moment with us. Don't hesitate to contact me on Twitter or LinkedIn to share your comments and reactions. You can also rate this episode on your favorite podcast platform. See you soon.